All right, the property prequel, be in the know before you buy. Really excited. Today's guest, we've got an auctioneer in the building. Reasons I love auctioneers is they're probably the most consistent people on the ground in any marketplace at any one time. I feel the mindset of an auctioneer, the good ones out there, their negotiation prowess and skill set is greater than some of the real estate professionals that get most of the accolades. So what I'm trying to highlight, I guess, for buyers, because I know a lot of buyers listen to this, is I guess turn the volume up and make sure you take some notes, because every time I get an auctioneer on here, the feedback I get is that was really, really a lot of value in that from a different perspective that people often forget about. So I'll introduce our guests in a moment, but just firstly, again, thanks for all the feedback. We had Smub Studio was our last guest episode. If you haven't heard it, give it a listen. It was around, I guess, building a life through property. They've done it full time now. The feedback was hectic on that one. So people love the everyday story of an everyday couple just having a crack with property. So give that one a listen. Let me know your thoughts. And keen to hear what you think of today. We're going to be touching on a bit of market, a bit of skill set negotiation stuff, and then where this convo can take us. Really, I'm really excited. We've actually got David Holmes from Holmes Auctions. He was the REIQ Auctioneer of the Year 21-23 currently, and also, mate, probably not only a great fella, but his acumen in the real estate space has got to be up there with one of the best. So we're really grateful to have David Holmes in the building.
Thank you, mate. Pleasure to be on the potty.
Mate, straight off the get-go, I always like to find out just quickly, like with auctioneers, like where do you get the thought of, hey, I want to be an auctioneer? Like where does that even start for a child, or like was this just a later in life thing?
I think you said child. That's probably where it started for me. I grew up in Melbourne, so in Melbourne, a lot of properties go to auction, as you know. So
yeah, true.
And in Queensland, that's probably a more recent thing. So growing up in Melbourne, you just saw auctions all the time. And I remember as a 9-year-old, I saw my grandparents' house auctioned in inner city Melbourne, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah,
a big crowd of people.
Were you in the crowd?
Like, just as a kid, sitting on the fence and watching,
that.
and guys in suits, and it was hectic, and there was yelling and shouting, and they sold in Doncaster in Melbourne. And I was and I remember just thinking that's what I want to do, and then obviously life takes over. You do school and the whole thing, and different things come up. But I sort of came back to it in my early 20s. Ended up doing my auctioneer's course in Brisbane. So I was living in Brisbane at the time, and then moved actually back down to Melbourne, took over an auction house. So not real estate auctions, but goods and chattels. So we had a warehouse full of stuff that we're auctioning. So it was more sort of general auctions. So so that's where it came from. But very much from childhood.
From a young age, just kind of ingrained in you. So pretty much straight out of school, down the path? Or?
No. Straight out of school, started selling pots and pans. So that was great. I had a bunch of jobs, mate. I was, just all in sales. But it took a while to get into the auctions. I was probably about 26, 27 by the time I got into auctions.
Yeah.
And then deviated again from that into other businesses, but eventually sort of moved to the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be an auctioneer agent there at that point. And,
as in like a sales agent and auctioneer?
Yeah. Yep. So I wanted to get into that auctioneering space, and the local auctioneer, very cleverly trying to guard off any other competition, told me that I needed to go sell for a couple of years, which I did, and it was the best thing I ever did. So, so it was good now for that experience, because I've sat on the other side of the dining room table. I've sold VPA, I've negotiated, I've listed, I've stuffed letterboxes, knocked on doors. I've done that. So I've experienced that. Did it at a good level there, Sunshine Coast, which was great. And then we had 38 agents in the business across a few offices, and I ended up doing auctions there, and then got out and did work with Nico for a year in Apollo, and then and then sort of forged my own path. Yeah,
unreal. And mate, it's interesting. Like I'm just thinking about pound for pound, surely Southeast Queensland. I don't know what it is. There's so many great auctioneers in Southeast Queensland. And like you mentioned there, obviously we've had Justin Nickerson on the app before. We're talking about Rob. I find him as a really good operator. You've got a team now of 5, is it? 4?
Yes.
At Holmes Auctions, like they do a lot in Brizzy.
Yeah.
I know they're all really good operators. Yourself, obviously, award-winning auctioneer, all in southeast Queensland. Like, what is it? Is it something in the water here in
I think
Queensland?
so, but it's a bit like it's like R.M. Williams, forged in tough conditions. I think because for so many years it was really tough to do auctions in Queensland. It wasn't the flavour.
It wasn't. Yeah, you're right.
For 20 years, we probably averaged. I mean, don't quote this as an exact figure, but I mean, for the first 5-6 years I was calling auctions, clearance rate 38%, clearance rate 41%, clearance rate 35%. Like it was all around that sort of level now. And we map all the data now. You look at the clearance rates now, we're 65 to 75 consistently. Like it has come up. Now some of that's supply and demand, but it's also a process now that's more widely accepted by the vendors. But for years it was really tough. It was seen as though properties were in trouble or owners were in trouble.
Yeah.
So auction wasn't the method. So, and if you look at our auction volume still, like if you look at the actual figures that CoreLogic put out, it's around about, say, 2 to 250 auctions on a Saturday in Brisbane.
Wow.
Melbourne will be 900, Sydney will be 1,100. So we're still way behind the 8 ball when it comes to volume. So to be an auctioneer in this climate and to be an auctioneer in this market, Southeast Queensland, it's tough. You've got to have, you've got to have guts to get out there. And as I said to you before, every seller knows an agent and every agent knows an auctioneer. So getting that business and getting that clientele to use you and regard you, it's tough. It's no different to being an agent. We do a lot of a lot of promotion around and new clients, etc.
It's a really good point, and I think that could add some value for our first piece of the convo. I think we'll add some value to buyers and sellers. I feel is understanding that. In terms of the macro of Australia, like Queensland is still catching up in terms of auction. It's a lot more acceptable and a lot more streamlined than what it used to be for sure.
Yes,
but we're still, your figures just that. So we're still well behind Sydney, Melbourne in terms of volume.
Yeah.
I mean, bigger cities, right? But in terms of the percentage of overall, it's still quite.
It's actually surprising markets. Like a couple of years ago, Canberra was the strongest auction market in Australia per capita.
Wow.
So there's a lot of auctions in Canberra, but the population is small, so it's probably skewed in that way. But yeah, we're still very much behind, which makes no sense because, I mean, 3/4 of the world's population wants to live in Southeast Queensland. You look from, Byron through to the Sunshine Coast. That's where the action is. That's where everybody wants to be.
Yeah.
I know Byron's not Southeast Queensland,
Yeah.
but, like that,
100%,
this pocket is highly desirable.
Yeah.
And, we saw through COVID, obviously, auctions went through the roof and haven't really come back. And it's now widely accepted.
Do you think it's going to continue to rise?
I do, yeah. I think we've got plenty of upside. There's only upside for Gold Coast, Brisbane. I mean, there's nothing to not like about our lifestyle, our temperature, our climate. It's only going to get better. And with the shortage of housing, with the strains on that, strains on rentals, why wouldn't you put competition in play? As a seller, why wouldn't you demand that people compete for your property? And if they're not, if they're going down a different road, I always go, well, why are you doing that? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we've identified two sets of buyers for your property. There's those who can afford it today and there's those who can afford it in a month's time. So why don't we work with the guys who can afford it today, put them in competition and make them compete and pay a premium for your property?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think let's dive into that because this can add some value, I think, to buyers just as much as sellers. So you hear this a lot, right? Sellers saying, I'm scared of auction. Why do you think sellers are scared of the word auction or running that campaign?
Yeah. It's no different to anything else in life. It's fear of failure and embarrassment. So I've not run an auction. Are people going to turn up? I've been to a failed auction. I went to an auction where there was no bidding. I went to an auction and the auctioneer passed it in and all the neighbours walked away and said we'd failed. So it's that sort of, I think it's that experience. Whereas if people are actually forewarned and actually prepared about the process, they're actually more comfortable. And I back myself in a listing presentation to actually step them through and go, hey, we've got a process here that's going to deliver offers. It's going to deliver feedback. It's going to deliver you potentially buyers for the day. And if we don't sell it on the day, I tell you what, I've got an overwhelming weight of information about what the market thinks, and we'll be able to price it correctly and it will go shortly after. Now, as an auctioneer, my aim is to get it done on the day, but let's get it done straight after. Now, if people understand, the phases of an auction process, and there's absolutely no shame in in selling prior. Heck, if somebody we're all sellers at one point or another, right, Matt? If someone's going to give you vastly more than what you were expecting or hoping for your property, you're more likely to take it at some point. If I want $1 million for my property and someone comes and offers 1.3, a week before the auction, hell, let's pull the trigger. Let's get it done if they can activate
Yeah.
the contract. So I think there's that sense of, fear around, is it going to work? Is it going to work?
Yes.
In Melbourne, when you say, I'm going to sell my property, your friend will say, great, when's the auction date?
Yeah.
Here, you say you're selling your property. Oh, who's it with? How are you selling? What price? We still ask those sort of questions.
True.
Whereas it's now becoming more acceptable around the auction. Where there's market leaders with big auction events, etc.
Definitely. Yep. It's a good point, and I think I can definitely support that as well. As I said, I'm a buyer's agent, obviously.
Yeah.
I see both sides. I've been a sales agent too, and I actually give feedback to some people because we get inquiry from vendors all the time saying, hey, I've got this property. Have you got buyers, kind of thing? And I always say, just because sometimes I feel bad for them. Obviously, if I've got a buyer, I'll let you know. But if you're going down the campaign, I kind of ask them, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to... And 9 times out of 10, they said, I'm not sure at an auction because I get scared, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. And I said this to someone probably a month ago, and I was saying, this is what I learned and this is what I'm observing. Auction is the day, and people put so much emphasis on the Saturday or the Friday or whatever it is, right? But if you look at it as what I can see as it's the process of there's pre, there's at, there's post, like it's all part of it. And I actually agree with you that if you put so much pressure on the day, that's the fear of the...
Yeah.
So it's like whatever happens on the day is going to judge whether you got the best price or whether it was a successful campaign or not, where I disagree. I think good agents and good auctioneers understand it's the process of the whole thing.
An agent has that campaign to build rapport with buyers, to build rapport with the sellers, and actually sort of create a mass of buyers who are hopefully ready to compete on the auction day.
Yeah.
If I said if you're going to have a 30th birthday party, you've got no friends, but hopefully we'll get a few people to turn up. You've got 3 weeks to do it. It might be a bit shaky, but with this we actually have a process, right? Let's get people in. Let's work with them week by week, and that comes down to great agents give great service to buyers. They'll help them through. They'll actually ask them questions at the open home. They'll give them information. They'll supply them with copies of the contracts. They'll put them in touch with brokers. They'll put them in touch with building and pest guys and all those sort of things in order to give them a good experience. And the best agents actually, will do a buyer meeting. They'll actually catch up with you and go, hey, are you ready to buy at auction? Have you got your deposit? What is your settlement? What entity are you buying at? Have you spoken to your broker? Can you bid at auction? So all those things will happen with a great agent. And so if you've had a great experience, as a buyer, there's nothing to be afraid of because you come into that day prepared.
Yeah.
But through a process.
Yes. Process, not outcome, is probably a good one.
Absolutely.
Key takeaway there for sellers.
Most definitely.
On that day, what about when do you think for a seller it's not the right property to auction?
It comes down to circumstances and motivation. I think there's not a property that can't be auctioned. And I often ask this of agents, which property should be auctioned? And inevitably, it's always the hard ones. Let's get that pink architectural place on the hill that everyone thinks is a bit weird. I can't put a value on it, so I'm going to take it to auction. Well, thanks very much. That's great. It's going to be a tough day for me as well if you don't know what value to put on it. So, whereas I think if you've got 3 or 4 properties in a suburb that have comparable,
some direct comparables,
direct comparables, and we know roughly where the benchmark, where the market sees value. That's an easy property to actually auction because more likely you've got 3 or 4 buyers ready to go at any time. You can create the competition. You'll get an unconditional contract. So there's no particular property, but it comes down to sellers' circumstances. If sellers need, and is it speed of sale? Is it price? Which one's more important? So we as agents need to be really, really clear. You've got to be, you've kind of got to be very clear about what the motivations and the intentions are before you go to auction. Because if there is no motivation, if we're miles and miles above, now you can use the auction process to potentially bring credible information, but if they're miles above the market, that doesn't point to a lot of motivation. So there's no property that shouldn't go. That said, sometimes, in new apartments and those sort of stuff, there might be 10 or 15 in the building that are for sale. That can be pretty tough. But it also can be a case of if there's one property going to auction in a building and the rest are all private treaty, that can point to the motivation of a seller. So as a buyer, I'm going to go to that one first, potentially, and have a look because there might be more motivation to get it done by a certain timeline.
Some really good key takeaways in there. I'm just unpacking now for buyers. If we put the buyer shoes on, why do you think buyers are scared of auction? for buyers?
Fear of unknown, and I think our legislation, which changed in the Occupations Act, Property
Yep.
Occupations Act in 14, changed, and it took away that price guide.
Yeah.
Which was quite
Yes.
frustrating,
Yep.
And as an agent, we used to put on, bidding from, or
Yep.
we could have a bit of a guide there.
Yep.
So that's changed, and I think buyers get a little bit scared. But at the end of the day, it's not founded in anything. That fear is not founded in anything. At the end of the day, you can Google a property. You can probably ask a mate who's got access to CoreLogic or something, to have a look at a property. We've all got access to that same information. We know what the comparables are, and we know what potentially our broker or our budgets are going to be. So there shouldn't be that fear. I think they're scared because they think, A, they might pay too much. They might get conned. They might
Yep.
get, feel like it's an emotional thing. Whereas where you think about the auction process, it's actually the most transparent process there is. That's why courts of laws, banks, financial institutions have been using this for decades, because it is transparent. As a buyer, and again, harking back to that buyer meeting, a great agent will sit down with a buyer and explain, if you were to be the successful purchaser on the day and you were just to outbid someone else, that gives you a very clear indication that you are buying at market value.
Yep.
So if I pay $1 million and the other guy was willing to pay $998,000, I pip him at the post by $2,000. I'm pretty comfortable that I win, and there was somebody else at that level. So there's some social proof. Most of us like what the rest of us like, right? So you've got an idea that that's exactly market level. So they shouldn't be scared. I think buyers need to be prepared, and it's almost, if you think again, and I hate harking back to COVID days because I think we do it too much, but if you think about the market in 2021, there was so many people who were able to get ready with their broker and actually able to bid based on their pre-approval at auction. And now we find that people are sort of diverting a little bit more away from that. Oh, we'll just see what happens at auction and we'll do it after, which is not a great strategy. And as a buyer, you shouldn't be afraid. You should actually be bold, Fortune favours the bold. If you're able to bid at auction, that's more likely. Vendors are most motivated on auction day. They want to get a deal done on the day, because if it doesn't get done on the day, we roll through to Monday and they go, oh, look, Matt, we'll just see what happens with the property. It didn't sell at auction. We're just going to kind of cruise and put our price up a little bit, see if someone will pay a bit more. So, yeah, it becomes quite frustrating.
It's really, really interesting, the auction dynamic. And as a buyer's agent, been doing this for a while, and then obviously buying property myself, I try to educate buyers out there based on exactly what that's probably a good place to take the combo. Like everything you just said there, I can support as a buyer's agent, where at the start, obviously your role is to try and get the best price on the seller's side, right? And you're an auctioneer, and me interviewing you, I'm a buyer's agent, and obviously we want to try and get it for the best price. But I still to this day give advice to buyers out there that sometimes a property is better to go to the auction. Like I'm telling you, register for the auction.
Yeah.
And make sure don't treat, again, it's like people are scared of the word auction. They're like, because I've had clients even sort of say like, yeah, if you can get that before auction, like we're happy. Like, it's just like, well, you got to look at it holistically, right? Like it's not always about like you're going to overpay all this and that on the day. Like what I'm trying to, I guess, educate back on what you said is that, look, you got to do your due diligence 100%, because the laws in Queensland, just based on what David was saying there, it changed a few years ago, wasn't it? That, they're quite like in Melbourne, they give those quote ranges or whatever.
Statement of information in Melbourne.
I mean, in Queensland, it's not as transparent. But at the end of the day, you should be doing your own due diligence anyway, roughly on what a property's worth, right? So that's probably number one. I always give, I guess, perspective to buyers is obviously do your own research first, which you should be doing. And then back from that, you should go into it confident on the day. If you've got, you've talked about your walkaway limits, what based on what the property's worth, what you see value. Because I'd still hand on heart believe there's so many buyers who don't even rock up on the day. They're just there sitting and waiting because they're fearful. That's one less buyer I have to worry about as a buyer's agent.
Yes.
And I love it. It's great. And one thing I also love around auction as well, transparent. You can hear some of the other bids as well. And second is, if you've got a right bidding strategy, which I'm sure we can chat around in a second, as a buyer's agent, I spend a lot of time on bidding strategy, when to bid, when not to bid, when to raise a certain bid, when to pause a certain bid. You somewhat have a little bit of control over the other buyers. Like it's one of the only processes where as a buyer, you can have a little bit of say on what happens on the floor. to a
Yes.
degree. It's very hard to do that when it goes behind closed doors and the agent's saying, put your best offer in by 5 p.m.
Yeah.
And, so it's really, really interesting, the auction. I definitely agree that all different methods, all great, but don't neglect the auction. One of my favorite sayings is, if there's a time that a vendor wants to do a deal, the agent wants to do a deal, and an auctioneer wants to do a deal, it's on auction day.
Absolutely.
No one wants to pass it in.
Yeah. Bad doors don't open.
Yeah.
Right? So it's right there in front of you.
You
Walk
got to
through.
you got to be there.
Yeah. I've encountered your strategies, by the way, at auction day. I'm not a fan. We need to probably work on some of those.
No, it's all part of it, right? And just on that, actually, Dave, on I guess auction days and strategies and things like that, what do you see the best buyers doing at auction versus the ones who you keep seeing at the auctions and they keep missing out and things like that? Like, is there anything you've observed or noticed?
Yeah, I think the best buyers have made a friend with the agent. Like, you don't want to get the agent offside, right, for a start. So and I see it so many times. I did one last Saturday, and the buyer came in fired up. He was angry at the agent, and he was angry at me. And I'm like, dude, we're not gonna, I want to help you out.
That's a very bad start.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so making sure you got good energy with the agent, good energy on the day. That's a start. Be in sync with them. Make sure that they are coming to you as a go-to person on the auction floor, ready to go. Action versus inaction. Nothing ever happens without action, right? So make sure you actually bid. That's the first thing. And I don't mind whether you want to start low or start high. It doesn't really bother me. But as long as you bid and I know that you're in the mix, I'm more likely to come and want to negotiate with you.
Yes.
And that negotiation can take different tones, So we want to make sure that you're in the mix and that you're working with the auctioneer. When I buy property at auction, I want to stand right up in front. I'm no shrinking violet. I'm not standing down at the back of the fence waiting to do a sniper bid at the end. Now, that's fine for some people, but I get in there and I just, hands up straight away.
100%.
I've got deep pockets and I'm here to buy. Fend off some of the other guys straight away. So body language. We don't spend enough time thinking about body language and those sort of things. I think so action is the big thing. So make sure you put a bid out early. That's the biggest thing. You want to make sure that your stamps and proceedings, you've got the agent, you've got the eye of the auctioneer. But B, it actually sort of it helps you to, I suppose, if you take that first bid, you're more likely to put in a second and third bid. If you don't put a bid in, and we're now waiting for 3 or 4 minutes, it's unlikely that you're putting a bid in. And if an agent has worded you up correctly, you then realise that if it goes past auction day, you can't see what your competition's willing to pay. A mentor of mine earlier in life said the best deals never hit the market, which is why car dealers buy their cars from auctions, then put a markup on it, then put it in the yard, with $5,000 on it to make their money, to make their margin. So in my mind, that's what you do at auction, right? You don't wait for it to be passed in and have a price put on it. You buy at auction, because the best ones don't hit the market with a price. They are done on auction day. Cash ready buyers, motivated sellers. It's a perfect synergy. We're an ecosystem. We all got to scratch each other's back, right? And get it done.
I love that. And then even in terms of, I really like what you said in terms of, I guess, adding some value to buyers there on some little strategies I heard you say there. People underestimate the body language, don't they?
100%.
And I always advise my clients, they're never actually on the floor. I've always got them on the phone for the pure reason of 90% of it is body. I don't want anyone seeing your body language.
Yes. Yeah.
Because again, I'm not afraid to say, I always look at everyone's body language, and I can tell straight away when they've got one bid left in them, or it's a little one. Like adding value to buyers, like even the calculator's a funny one, isn't it? Like as soon as that calculator comes out there, it's just interesting. And like I always go off as well. I like what you said there, and it really relates to something I love, is putting the pressure back on the decision maker. Like if the bid's on someone else, they're under the pressure. So if you're bidding confidently, strong, your walkaway limits, but you're bidding with the mentality of, I guess, like you said, deep pockets. The pressure's back on all right, the bid's over to you now. 1,000, boom, straight away, back, decision's on you. You've got all the pressure.
If you don't bid, it's more likely that somebody else won't bid, right? And we're in a stalemate. So you then never get to, water finds its level. You never know where the other bidder is going to be. So you don't know whether you can be the underbidder, the overbidder, or have I paid too much? Have I bid not enough? So you've got to bid. It's got to.
You've got to bid. Yeah, you've got to bid. It's so funny the amount
Yeah.
of people who that grab the paddle and don't do nothing with it.
And the numbers are clear. It's kind of like that high 60s, around 70% of the times. It's that first bit of holding the keys.
Yeah.
End of the day, we say that in every auction, and it's just so true, and
Yeah.
it always rings true. And I always say at the end of the auction, no surprises here. The first bidder here, is our winning.
Yeah,
winning bidder.
I love it. Sounds like that confidence. Well,
Yeah.
I always say the confidence comes from the knowledge on what you're willing to pay and market value.
Yes.
I always find the best buyers and buyers agents have done their due diligence in the background.
Yeah.
They're coming onto the floor very confident. So it's
Yeah.
very easy
Yeah.
to open the bidding. And one tip I always give the buyers as well is because correct me if I'm wrong, I like to chat to you around it, momentum and things like that. Good auctioneers can create momentum, right?
Yeah.
And I find some buyers nearly let other buyers build the momentum up.
Yes.
Whereas I always like to bid hard, bid strong, know your walkaway limit, because you can cut off a lot of people from, doing that for, this isn't for us. So
Yeah.
momentum, I just want to touch on that. How important is momentum in an auction floor?
Incredibly important for auctioneer and seller and agent. If you don't create momentum, it can just coast. It needs to be a race of the fittest, right? It's got to be momentum. My style is to probably create that momentum. A lot of auctioneers are very conversational.
Yeah.
They're happy to talk through the auction and just sort of take the bids and thank you and let's move on and add another 10. Early mentors, auctioneers, were fine wine auctioneers in New Zealand, and they would call it like a race course. They were doing the house auctions, but they'd call it like a race course.
Yeah, really.
So
yeah.
they added inflection, they added tone, they added pace. Some of the great auctioneers in Queensland, they're really fast. That come from that stock and station background.
Yes.
And it's because it creates momentum. If we're doing a 3-call, first, second, third, and we're racing through that, and we're pointing and we move and we point away from you to someone else, you can create that momentum. You can create that sense of loss and that sense of somebody's going to miss out. But also, I'm looking to the people who are willing to bid, and I'm going to invite them back in. Then I give them a 3 count and welcome back in. So momentum's incredibly important to the outcome of the auction. As soon as you break momentum, we go behind closed doors, or there's a huge break in bidding. It's very hard to get momentum back. So
Yes.
it needs to be out of the gates, straight up. Yeah.
Yep.
And again, momentum for your buyers, because we're looking through the lens of a buyer today. Momentum is important. Put your hand up quickly, because it dictates terms to the other buyers. I'm here to buy.
I'm here to buy,
I'm
yeah.
going to get it done,
100%.
and I'm going to beat you. And I've
Yep.
got deep pockets.
Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah.
So true. I'm just reflecting on all of our auction wins, and the strategy was pretty much everything we're talking about. And it's not
100%.
rocket science either.
No, it's not.
It really isn't. So one thing on that as well, on the getting to the auction, I guess this will add some value to buyers too. That willingness to bid, you really want to get to a position where if it does go behind closed doors, it's good to have that position of the negotiation, right? When
Yeah.
it could stall. So
Yeah.
that's actually a good thing for buyers, because you heard it there from the auctioneer. Obviously, momentum's important. If you can stall it, but also grab you're in control with the auctioneer and agent to try and nut this out.
Yeah.
That's a great position to be in.
It is, yeah.
If it's not slammed on the floor, it's the auctioneer is going to talk to.
In Queensland, we
you.
don't grant first rights of negotiation. In New South Wales, you do. So here, as soon as it's either passed in or whatever, we are. It's open slather, right? Anybody can come with conditions or unconditional. But if you're in that position where we've come to you first and we're giving you the first opportunity to buy, it's almost affording you those negotiation rights
massive.
without doing it officially.
100%.
So you've got a chance. And as I always say to the buyers, the owners want to get it done today. Do not let this pass to tomorrow, right? Because you will miss an opportunity.
Yeah.
There's 3 other people in the crowd out there. They want to use finance. They want to do some due diligence, and they're willing to pay more potentially than you are. So, what are you going to do today to get it done? And I always say to them, we're looking for the best buyer for this property. Are you the best buyer? Nobody ever wants to say that they're not the best buyer. I'm like, we're looking for the best buyer with respect. So, are you willing to perform today to get it done, or do you want us to sell it to someone else?
Yeah.
Fear of
Interesting.
loss, take it away from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about in terms now, mindset of negotiation? One thing I really value and notice and observe with the best auctioneers, like yourself and some of the other ones we mentioned earlier, I love observing and watching, and they're very quick in that negotiation that you don't know where that could have went.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, you may have come into auction kind of reserve might be there, the buyers might be there, market value, but obviously that doesn't always go to plan. But that doesn't change your speed of, hey, you got to go behind closed doors, come back out to the buyer. I'm really curious into someone who's successful as an auctioneer. What's your mindset going into that? Like, do you have like a thought pattern or process in terms of like, all right, I just want to get some idea on where this vendor's at, and then I'm going to go back and chat to the buyer. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you have a mindset going into that?
Yeah,
Because
so
it's a very good skill set.
Yeah, so I have a outcome that I know most of the time is going to happen. So I don't know what the number will be, obviously. That's crystal ball stuff.
Yep.
But I know what the outcome is. And that comes through knowing your agents, knowing how they work, and also reading the room. So I will talk to the agents about the buyers when I get there. And I'll often, if I've got time, sometimes you're rushing on auction day, but most auctions I will go and I'll have a chat to each and every buyer that's registered. G'day guys, I'm Dave, going to be your auctioneer today. You comfortable with everything? Any questions around the contract? No, great. Where are you going to start your bidding today, right? No one ever asks, tells me. But we build a bit of rapport, we have a laugh, we move on. And I'll have a quick chat to the agent, guys. Which one's, what are your offers? Who's most
Based on
likely
the
going to be your
campaign
buyer?
so far,
Who's your strongest buyer? Who am I looking to? Who do you want me to talk to if we pause? Like, because I get off the auction floor, I go and talk to buyers and sellers. So I roll the sleeves up, I get it done. Because if I can sniff a deal, I'm gonna get it done on auction day. So the best auctioneers, I think, are nimble around that. They know what the outcome's going to be. So I can ask very, very pertinent questions to the seller on the day because I've spoken to them throughout the campaign. So a couple of days before the auction, I usually have a conference call with the agent, and not all auctioneers do this. It's part of something that I do because I think it adds value. I will have a chat to the seller, and we'll talk about where the reserve's going to be, what the offers have been, what the likely outcome is going to be, what the likely selling zone is going to be, and then I can basically say, the conversation we had on Thursday night is playing out right in front of us. This is what we need to do in order to get you moving today. And then we can talk about the outcome there. So we're very quick on it. We don't muck around, because as soon as you lose that crowd, you lose momentum, the wrong thing can happen.
I guess they're adding value to sellers who may become buyers, but obviously going through that process then is that, because I've heard this before, right? I've been to some campaigns, auctioneer and everything, because I do the same on my front. Like, I always got to check that we got an auction in 2 weeks. I've started planting the seed with the agent and who's going to be auctioneering, and I want to chat space with him or her or whoever it is, and get an idea and try and work with them, not against them. And then that way I can provide my clients the best outcome feedback, so we're prepared. But what I've seen happen as well is sellers will just night before just change everything, and the agents kind of lost it, and then and you can't control that as in you. So I guess what the feedback there is, like, the process, like follow the process.
Yeah.
Has that
and I reckon
happened before?
20% of the auctions I turn up to at the moment, the reserve is different on Saturday than what it was on Thursday night. We thought we'd throw an extra $100,000 on. We didn't want to limit ourselves. Okay, cool. So I know it.
So that could be a detriment to the campaign doing.
Totally.
Yeah. So that's good feedback. Yeah.
But equally, just going back to that, the mindset. We go and have those same swift decisions. Swift conversations with the buyers as well, because it's important they make fast decisions, and that comes down to an agent making sure they're prepped and ready to go. It's a big say, you're dealing $1 million, a couple of $1 million. There's commission on the line there. There's emotions on the line. There's everything's there, and we've got a pressure cooker situation.
Yes.
If that pressure cooker gets released, buyers are gone, sellers are gone, the house sits on the market, and all of us have failed, right?
Yeah.
So, well, not failed, but we've now got a lengthier process than what we needed. So, so making sure that we can have those conversations with the buyers, and we're helping them out. Like we want exactly the same outcome. You want to buy something, we want to sell something. Let's meet in the middle. Let's get it done.
I think that's a big one. Hey, like with buyers, I just observe, and I can hear the tonality overhearing, and it's nearly a tonality of like buyer against auctioneer and seller.
Yes.
Whereas my number one negotiation tip to all buyers is it's like buyer work with seller and auctioneer to try and create a win-win all around. Like, again, you guys on your side want to get things done with a great outcome for all parties just as much as a buyer does. Yeah. So it just baffles me how the tonality and the nearly like an aggression, it's like work with them, work with the professionals.
Right now, looking at buy at auction, like I'd be watching videos on YouTube. I'd be watching how auctioneers work. I'd be ringing up, asking agents who might not be selling the property, and other agents say, "How does that auctioneer work? How does that work? How does it look?" But be prepared because more and more properties will be going to auction, and you need to get comfortable with that process.
True.
And on the other side, if you have a good experience, you might want to auction your property in a couple of years' time too. So getting more comfortable with the process that is, very, very present right now, it's not going away, is paramount because less and less properties. And I see a lot of agents doing this, forthcoming auction or coming soon or expressions of interest or offers by and all that sort of stuff. And that's great, but offers by, it's, let's not talk about sales processes, but there's more and more sales methods without prices on the market than ever there has been before. So right now, you're going to have to get used to doing your market research, making sure you're comfortable with your bids at, making sure that you know what your budget's at, making sure that you've got, Uncle Greg who can spot you a bit more if you need to on auction day. You've got some, contingency plan. But just get used to that process because it's not going away, and it can actually be the best buys can actually be on auction day. I'm not saying they're bargains. I'm just saying they're best buys, all right, and they're most motivated.
Just on that as well, like you've got the auction day, say on the Saturday. How much prep do you think? I'm just curious what you think. Like a really good buyer coming into auction day isn't prepping on auction day. Like how much time do you think would be sufficient for a buyer out there to prepare for auction day? And what would some of those key things be to prepare for?
I think it starts on week one. I mean, we all get our alerts on, from the property portals, right? So you find out, you go through the first open home. If you're keen on the property, I would go to every open home you can. You want to be as familiar with that property as you possibly can be. Go there at different times of day. So, go there at night, see what the traffic's like, the sounds. If you want to know, what it might be like in the morning, go there in the morning at peak hour. See all those sort of things. Make sure you experience the, actually living there without living in the house. Don't go and live in the house. That's probably frowned upon while the current owners are still there. But if you go and experience that property and that market, that neighbourhood. So it needs to start probably from day one. I think you've probably got a couple of weeks prep. And you might be doing that at 2, 3, 4, 5 different properties at a time. But to get the right property that's going to house your family or your situation is paramount. You're going to spend a lot of money on it. So do as much prep as you can. And again, sit down with the agent and say, hey, can you give me a strategy around that buying? Can you talk to me about some of the other properties? I want to understand what was in that property because I can only see photos of it. What made that one so expensive or what made that one so good? Or why did that one not even hit auction? Why was it so popular? So do that sort of research. But I think you can't just turn up on auction day and hope for the best.
Yes.
I mean, heck, what if your fridge doesn't fit in? You need to measure things. You need to understand the property. You need to, experience and imbibe it.
I love that. It's a pressure cooker day. So the more you can ease the pressure of the day through being prepared, I feel you come into the day a lot more mentally stable or your decision-making muscle will be a lot stronger. Yeah. That's what I find the buyers who all keep missing out or just, aren't successful at auctions is most of it is because they let the day, the moment, the pressure cooker environment control the decision-making.
Because you want to know as a buyer's agent, like you want to know days before the auction,
everything,
what a good buy is for them, what an uncomfortable buy is, and what they're, what's their max they'll go to, right?
Yeah.
And you want to be able to make those decisions, really swiftly on the day. So prep is absolutely paramount.
Huge. And a key tip there for buyers, just again, I really like that. Like one thing we always do with the buyers is, talking on due diligence strategy and price. But a lot of it is based around the price and where the client sees value, and we're helping them merge that. And then a lot of my strategy is based on that. So I'm already going into the day with all these different things, but I already know. So that's a really good point you've touched there. Like I'm thinking about now as a professional buyer's agent, it's easy for me to say, but if I can add some value to buyers, I agree with Dave wholeheartedly that you go and the best buyers come and you become the best buyer and the winner of the property when you're really prepped, really prepped on the day. Yeah, because you can make better decisions.
And we often find the best buyer has done the most prep.
Yeah.
It's very rare. Yes, you hear those stories of people who turned up on auction day and bought it sight unseen. Great. Yeah. That's some of their freakish properties. But, the best buyer's done the most prep. They've experienced the home. They've got a good relationship with the agent and they know. And you can see them. They're calm. They're at ease. Might be a little bit nervous, but they're calm on auction day and they're ready to go.
Yeah. Body language on point, eh?
101.
Yeah, 101. Mate, and just to wrap up, I'm curious, we get a fair few agents, whatnot, listen to. What do you think? You said there, like auctions aren't leaving. Some agents have had their process down pat that their office might have had or instilled in them from day one.
Yeah.
what do you think with auctions and attaching that to agents? What do you think the best agents are doing and what the ones who may be struggling at the moment doing? Like, what's the difference with both of them when it comes to the auction process?
So guys who are doing auctions versus people who aren't?
Maybe both who are doing auctions,
Yeah.
but the ones who are getting really, I guess, good results
Yeah.
and clearance rates, all that, and the ones who
Yeah.
auction's not for me.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Okay, so the great agents are actually from day one acting with credible urgency, all right? So a lot of our training with
Yeah.
agents now is actually around getting the property sold before auction day.
Yeah.
So if you act with that amount of credible urgency, it's more likely you're going to prepare me with or provide me with registered bidders, offers, information, and then we've got everything we need, all the ingredients to, if we don't sell prior, to potentially sell on auction day, all right? So it comes through from day one. And it's not good enough to leave it till week 3 and 4. I have a lot of my agents, beautiful people, bring me up and go, mate, I've got no one, I've got no one. I'm like, well, why do you have no one? Let's go back and see what you've done. So it comes down to, week 1, if you do an open home, straight away those feedback calls need to be enticing. They need to be motivating people through to an offer, all right? And a great question I like to ask, as an agent to a buyer is, hey, where do you think the property should sell on auction day? If people don't give you feedback, it's like, it's not me asking you how much you're going to spend. It's not me asking your budget. It's two guys talking about the property market. Where do you think the owner should set their reserve to sell it on auction day? Gives you a really good heat map on where they're thinking the value might sit. All right,
I like it.
fantastic. Then you can sort of drive offers from there. The best agents will get 5 offers a campaign. All right, so you got a 3 or 4 week campaign, and most people are talking about record attendances at open homes at the moment. So if you've got 25 people come through, it's likely there's 2 or 3 people inside of that who would be happy to make an offer.
True.
Regardless of whether it's conditional or unconditional, it provides information for the seller. So the good agents are getting offers and lots of them. They're actually keeping their buyers on the line throughout the campaign. They don't just get an offer and dump them. They actually get an offer and then they keep them
engaged.
Yeah, you've got a
Yeah.
relationship. We call these buyer commitment calls where we basically, we keep the buyer motivated. You call them in week 2. Hey, thank you so much for coming along. Jenny and Michael said they're very keen to see you on auction day. If you're going to buy the property, what's your deposit going to be? What settlement terms would you like? What entity are you going to buy at? So I'm talking to them the whole way along because I know they've got a chance of buying that property, and we need to know, or we need to let them know that they've also got a good chance of being the buyer on the day. We're looking for the best buyer. We want to make sure you've got this set up. So talk them through, again, buyer checklist in that final week. Give them a buyer meeting.
Yep.
Have a conversation so they're prepped, and then greet them warmly on auction day. So agents who are able to entice offers throughout, that is the number one thing that is going to get you more. And then the great agents will meet with their vendors. They don't just send information to the vendor in the form of a vendor report and expect them to read the whole thing. They're going to look at the back page and go, right, what do the buyers think my place is worth, right? That's the nugget at the end they want to read. So I will send my vendor feedback report when they're ready. Guys, what time can we chat about your vendor report? I want to send it through, but I want to make sure we just go through a few things. So I'll send it 5 minutes before that conversation, or I will meet with them in person. And where possible, meet with them in person, 20 minutes, half an hour tops. Just go through, here's the information. And then the question is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you were to sell your property today or in 20 minutes from now, where would your reserve be? We want to make sure they're close to the market, right? So we're keeping a heat map on offers, we're keeping a heat map on reserve, and we're making sure that the two marry on the day. And it doesn't change the outcome. It doesn't change the fact that we're still trying to get the very highest possible price for our sellers. It just makes sure that we're all, we're keeping the train on the rails, right? We're making sure that it all happens. So the best agents do that. They're servicing their vendors, they're servicing their buyers. They get through to auction week and they ring me up and they go, Holmesy, I've got 4 buyers ready to go. There might be a couple of dark horses on the day, and I've had 4 offers. Highest offer was here, lowest offer was here, reserves here. And I know
you can kind of,
mate, I've got an 80%, I'll know what's going on the day then.
Interesting. Really, really good feedback. And not only to agents, I guess the mindset to buyers out there of, again, it's not auction day. There's a lot of process in week 1, week 2, week 3, like heaps. So much.
Buyer's calendar, an agent auction calendar that we put together, and it shows every activity that a great agent will do across 3 to 4 weeks. You are busy. Like if you're doing it properly, you are busy. You've got so much going on in creating that environment, that bidding arena, for the sellers. Just to touch point, to your earlier point, agents who aren't listing auctions versus agents who are doing auctions. Agents who aren't listing auctions are often then looking for different ways to profile and expose their business. Whereas great agents are able to go, do an auction, and you might have a number of people, there on the day who might be neighbours, especially if we do a midweek. You get a lot of neighbours turning up, coming and watching the show. Hey, Matt, what do you think my property's worth? I'm 2 doors up, so they'll come and have a chat to you as the agent and you have a chat that way. And then an agent who's done a great auction, the hammer's fallen. You go knock on 10 doors that night. Hey, guys, we've just sold number 3 down the road. I think it's changed the values of the properties in the area quite dramatically. When can I catch up with you, to give you an update on your market value? What a great, that's the most up-to-the-minute market information that you've got. What a great opportunity to go and, with credible urgency, with confidence, and with energy, go and talk to people who are prospective sellers versus the guy that sells private treaty, right? It goes unconditional in some back room. You get an email. Then he gets DLs printed. Then he rings everyone to tell them that's got sold. And then he goes stuffs letterboxes. One process is smarter. Yeah.
Really interesting. Yeah. Really, really interesting. And I know that's going to add a stack of value for buyers. Just on the helicopter view of a campaign, like it's easy for me as a buyer who does this for a living, but I think that's going to add so much value to the buyer to understand it's not so much around the date, like there's process behind.
It's not smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, there's a lot of process that goes into it. One thing on that as well, and it'd be a good one, they'll add some value to buyers and sellers out there, that seller expectation management, I think is a big one, especially. I see working with so many great agents with our business, the best ones can have the crucial conversations and position things accordingly. Whereas I find some don't have control. And one quote I really love is like, if you don't confront it, you're validating it.
Yeah.
And the good agents are comfortable confronting and having the honest conversations. And that's up to a vendor to see where they're at. But a good agent, you're getting professional advice, up-to-date advice, rather than some agents who'll just, the vendor might be way off, but they don't say anything and they're validating, and then they're wondering why the auction's not for me.
Yeah, 100%. It's yes, you're right. If it doesn't, if you're not doing it, it condones it. Inaction condones, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really, really, really interesting, mate. As we wrap up, what's your take on the market? Like, just quickly coming into 2024, I'm noticing supply levels super short. I'm not sure how it is in Brizzy, but I've heard it's very much the same. But what Southeast Queensland, what are you noticing and what do you predict?
Well, we sort of work predominantly, northern New South Wales, Sunshine Coast. So Brisbane and Gold Coast are our main markets for auctions. I caught up with the guys from REA last week, and they were sort of saying, 8 to 10%, down year on year, which I thought was lower than what it might be. I thought it might be higher than that, but it seems as though there is plenty of listings. There's certainly a number of listings around, but it feels tight. I felt though this year a lot of agents were, or a lot of the industry was slower in getting back, and probably a lot of sellers were sort of, slow to pull the trigger on selling as well. So it took a really slow late January. February's good. March is nuts. It goes crazy. So I think there's going to be a lot more properties come. There would be a lot of people who sort of probably held on, with 15 interest rate rises, who are now probably sitting there going, we can't afford to do this for too much longer, with good reason, which is unfortunate. True. But, they're also probably making some seriously good return on the property. I think this year is going to be quite frenetic. I don't think we're going to drop back to the 1.8 registered bidders per auction. I think we're going to have 3, 4, 5 registered bidders. I think that, the clearance rates are going to stay very, very high. We're already seeing some of those auctions really, almost like it was like 2021 again. There's just a lot of bidding, a lot of fast, hard bidding. Probably the gap management is still probably crucial. We're still seeing, vendors, as I sort of intimated earlier, a little bit too high on auction day, just with their reserves. But most people are pretty reasonable, again, if they've been prepped. So, but I think it's good times. I think, we've got no reason to slow down in our market. Southeast Queensland, as you keep talking about, it's only upside. It's only upside. Yeah. So I think great agents will be doubling down. I sat with an agent last week and I said, she was getting a bit frustrated, not as many doors to knock on, not as many, people in her pipeline. I said, quite simply, are you in contact with every person you've ever sold to or sold for? And she said, no. And I said, well, you've probably got a hole in your database right there. It's amazing how we finish a transaction, finish a relationship and don't keep it going.
Don't keep it going.
Like when you sell a house twice, it's a really sweet feeling. You can do that. But there's opportunities there, I think, to widen, and get better at what we're doing. And, I don't get followed up. I go to open homes all the time. A lot of agents are not, following them. I've gone down the wrong road. But, if you want more listings, you probably need to act, you need to offer better service right now.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
More than ever, the gap between the true professional and the everyday part-timer is huge. And
it's easy to hide behind market reports and texts and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Get out belly to belly,
roll the
shoulder to
sleeves,
shoulder.
Yeah. Mate, to finish on 2024 for buyers, what would be your biggest key tip at the moment?
I think we've probably already touched on it, Matt. I think getting prepped, and it's going to be a frustrating ride because, we talk about 5 bidders at every auction. 4 people go away disappointed. And potentially they're just the ones who can bid unconditionally. Then there's probably another dozen who can be conditional buyers. So there's a stack of disappointed people with every property. Right. So get prepped, get used to disappointment, get used to that feeling of discomfort because you might not be the best bidder on the day. But if you are, have your strategy ready. So number 1 would be strategy, get that ready. Also, number 1 would be prep. Mm-hmm. Number 2 would be strategy. And get ready and continue going to auctions because they're not going away and you have to keep fronting up. And it's amazing how many times people just won't turn up to the auction because they don't know what's going to happen. Now, if we pass a property in and a buyer's there who can work with us unconditionally or negotiate on the day, we will work with that person, straight away.
On the go,
Yeah, it's Johnny on the spot, right? Make sure you're there. So even if it looks like it's going to pass in, even if it looks like too expensive, make sure you're there. Get used to attending auctions. Get used to being disappointed because you will crack the egg. Yeah. Every one that you miss out on is one step closer to the right one.
Yeah, love it. It's not always about the next property; it's about the right property.
Absolutely.
And mate, it's just fun. It happened last week. We always have a training on Monday, and we're talking like strategies and things like that. And one of our gun buyers agents, she does a lot in the northern Gold Coast, and she had a conditional buyer, so not auction. And we put together a bit of a strategy with the agent leading into it around a fortnight prior, where she was there on the day with the contract in hand, waiting for on the floor.
Yes,
not bidding, but as soon as it passed in,
perfect process.
Boom, in the car park.
Yeah. But that's a process right there. That's a process.
It's a process, yeah.
I've got my contract. I know how much you're willing to spend. If the property gets passed, I've got my contract ready to sign. Job's done, right? Yeah. And she might have gone to a dozen auctions, right, ready to do that.
Yeah.
And finally cracked the egg.
Yeah.
Happy days.
I love it. It really relates to what you're saying. There's no better time to buy a property than on the day. So
absolutely,
my mindset's there, mate. That was super insightful. I'm really glad we had that conversation. I think
pleasure, mate.
Not only for buyers, I think for future buyers who need to sell, I think that there was some real value there. And then I think even from the agents, we get a lot of buyers agents. Key things I find there is that it's not going away, the process.
Yeah.
For real estate agents, but for buyers agents, especially an industry I'm passionate about, learn the art, go and watch auctions. I used to watch so many auctions just to see how the bidding was and seeing how buyers' body language is. And you heard it there first from David, one of the best in the game. Body language, strategy, prep. So if you're a professional and you want to represent buyers out there, you take it serious. It's not going away.
Yeah.
Auctions are not going away. So, mate, really appreciate your insight. Mate, good luck for the hammers this weekend. What do you use? Do you use the little hammer still, or you the roll up?
Well, I don't think we should call it a little hammer. We use a reasonably sized gavel. Thanks, mate. It's a gavel.
The gavel. Sorry, that's the word.
But I do. Some of my clients love the gavel, and some don't want that. They just want the roll up contracts.
It's funny, isn't it? It's mate. I think it's like final. You got to keep the gavel, sure.
I love it, mate. I love it. It adds an element of who's that dude walking around with a hammer? He must be the owner.
You got to stick to the back pocket.
Don't have a holster for it. That's too far. It's too far.
Unreal, mate. Really appreciate your wisdom, mate. Where can people reach you?
Oh, mate, just homesauctions.com.au. You'll find us there. Yeah, or of course, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff.
Yeah,
so,
you're doing fair. Mate, a lot of the value you're adding on there has been awesome. You share a bit of BTS on on auctions, which is cool. I
Yeah,
think that
thank you.
buyers should go check that out. So,
Yeah.
mate, appreciate your time. Good luck for the rest of the year, and mate, keep crushing it.
Thanks, Matt. We'll see you at an auction soon.
You will, yeah.